as America inches closer before the war, as it inches closer to Great Britain, did Kennedy collaborate with the key isolationists like Lindbergh or Ford in advocating isolationism?
He fed enormous amounts of information to isolationist congressmen and senators. Burton K. Wheeler was the main one. As a matter of fact, Wheeler said in a really difficult argument with Roosevelt and the State Department, "My information is more correct than your information." And Roosevelt knew that that information had come from Kennedy. Okay, so he was still, even though he was in the UK and in London, he was feeding tons of information through to isolationist senators and congressmen, which really hurt. He was not that involved with Ford at this point, although he had been in 1932, in the 1932 election. His friend was Lindbergh, and he basically involved Lindbergh in a very controversial study of the armament situation on the eve of war, and had him produce this report on the German Air Force. And the report was very one-sided. It was, in respect of the strength of the German Air Force, completely wrong. In respect of the British Air Force, it was mostly right, because Britain had very little by the way of an Air Force, but that also goes back another 10 years before that. And particularly Chamberlain, who, when he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, had never voted the money to beef up the Army or the Air Force. But anyway, so this report was actually extremely important, but it did not change US foreign policy. He remained friendly with Lindbergh. Lindbergh wanted him to become a spokesperson for America First after he came back to America in 1940, and he refused. Now, I think that his refusal to become part of American First, I mean, he had a one-man show that he was taking all around America, preaching isolationism to whoever would listen. He wouldn't become part of America First because I believe he thought that would hurt his son's political careers. And he was determined that Joe Jr. would be the first American Catholic president. But what he did do, which backfired very badly on him, is he convened all the Hollywood producers and told them to stop making anti-Hitler films. They didn't know what they were doing. And I quote from a 2-page letter to Roosevelt from Douglas Fairbanks Jr. about how horribly this thing was received, and how dare he talk against the president in this way, because he was actually also saying horrible things about Roosevelt. And of course, the president knew. But it was better to have Joe Kennedy not in a political position, with America approaching war very quickly, than Joe Kennedy in a position of power.